Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of John Patrick Addis? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. John Patrick Addis was born in May 1950 in Flint, Michigan. In 1971, he married a woman named Jody. They went on to have 4 children between 1973 and 1981. The family moved to Sitka, Alaska, where John found a job as a dog catcher. In 1974, he found work as an Alaska State Trooper. He was transferred to the town of Fort Yukon and eventually to Fairbanks. John became well respected as an expert in crime scene analysis. He even instructed other officers. During this time, he lived with his family in a remote cabin. The lifestyle was difficult and isolating. The cabin did not have plumbing, a generator was used for electricity, and the floor was just dirt. Instead of a bathroom, the family used an outhouse, which was particularly unpleasant in the cold climate of Alaska. John's marriage started to disintegrate because he mistreated Jody verbally and physically. Jody filed for divorce, and the couple had a bitter custody dispute. Ultimately, Jody was victorious and was awarded primary custody of all 4 children. In December 1982, John married a woman who worked for the government. He quit his job with the police and moved with his new wife to the state of Florida. He told his colleagues that he had been accepted to medical school, but the acceptance letter that he showed them had been fabricated. The marriage ended in 5 months, and the woman returned to Alaska. John remained in Florida and married a pharmacist. They had a daughter together in September 1985. Upset about not seeing his children in Alaska, John developed a plan to kidnap them. He was going to dress up as a woman and take the children while they were being watched by a babysitter. John told his wife about the plan, but she did not want to be involved, mostly because of the kidnapping part. She filed for divorce in October 1985. In the summer of 1986, Jody put her 4 children on a flight to Florida for a court-ordered visit with John. Instead of returning them when the visit was over, John fled to Kalispell, Montana, where he lived with his children in a cabin just outside town. In April 1987, he was arrested after being spotted at a local gym. Someone recognized him from a wanted poster. After being extradited to Alaska, John was convicted of parental child abduction and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He was released in 1988 after serving a year and a half. This represented the beginning of a new adventure for John. Over the next few years, he traveled throughout the United States and committed a number of offenses. His typical tactic was to find a job as a fitness instructor and use his physical appearance and charisma to attract a woman romantically. Before the woman figured out that he was a violent criminal, he would take her money and disappear. John spent time in California, Georgia, Oklahoma, Utah, Arizona, Florida, and other places during his magical journey. He used the alias John Edwards, which may have come from a driver's license he stole in Florida. By 1995, John was living in Las Vegas, Nevada, and once again working as a personal trainer at a gym. One of his clients there was a woman named Tara. She introduced John to a friend of hers named Joanne Albanese. Joanne had been married to a man named Tom for many years and had 2 daughters with him. The couple divorced in 1991 because Joanne was unhappy with the marriage. She felt as though Tom worked too much, and she was looking for a bit more excitement in her life. Joanne had once been a model and was highly committed to her physical appearance. She was attracted to John because he was physically fit, outgoing, friendly, and charismatic. Not long after meeting, when Joanne and John were eating dinner at a restaurant with Tara and her husband, John had a strong reaction to a benign comment that Tara made. She indicated that she wanted John to help her lose a few pounds. John yelled that he was the best and pounded his fists on the table. The fact that other people in the restaurant were offering him stunned looks did not discourage him. John appeared to be deranged. His eyes were bulging, and the veins in his forehead were clearly visible. Both Tara and Joanne were astonished to see this side of John. The anger outburst was completely uncalled for and not flattering. During a discussion between Tara and Joanne, Tara expressed her concerns about John. Joanne admitted that she also had concerns. During their brief romance, John had become demanding and controlling. He wanted sex nonstop and made Joanne stay naked all the time when they were together. He also watched her constantly. Joanne could not even use the bathroom without John being there to monitor her progress. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On Friday, August 18, 1995, Joanne told her friend Tara that she was tired of John. Her plan was to take him to a nice restaurant on Saturday and break up with him. On Saturday, August 19, Joanne left work at about 4:30 p.m. and went home. On this weekend, Joanne's daughters were with her ex-husband, Tom. At about 6 p.m., Joanne talked on the phone with her mother. She once again indicated that she was breaking up with John that night. When Joanne's daughters were dropped off at her home the next day, Sunday, August 20, their mother was not there. It was clear that something was not right. For example, Joanne's purse was in the home. Her gold 1993 Honda Accord was missing. There was a mess in the bathroom, which was unusual for Joanne. Jewelry that Joanne wore every day was on a dresser, and the lights were on. One of Joanne's daughters called Tom and then called the police. Investigators noticed that John's pickup truck was parked near Joanne's residence, but the truck was not registered to anyone. On August 23, the police executed a search warrant for John's residence, which was a room he rented in a Las Vegas house. They found 2 wallets. One contained identification for John Patrick Addis, which was John's real name. The other contained identification for John Stone, one of the many aliases that John used. A hiker discovered Joanne's Honda Accord near the town of Prescott, Arizona, in a remote area called Little Hell Canyon. The police carefully examined the vehicle and found no evidence of an attack. However, they still believed that Joanne was the victim of a crime. In late 1996, John, who was now using the alias John Charles Peterson, showed up in Guadalajara, Mexico. He became romantically involved with a woman named Laura Padilla, and they married. Laura ran off with John. Her family later became concerned that John would murder her. In March 1997, Joanne's case was featured on the talk show Geraldo. Someone called in a tip saying they saw a man matching John's description at a gym in Mexico, but John received a tip of his own and was gone by the time the authorities arrived. On October 16, 1998, a hunter in Arizona found human bones about a mile from where Joanne's Honda had been discovered over 3 years earlier. The remains were matched through dental records to Joanne. John had already been indicted by this point for kidnapping. He now received an upgrade to first-degree murder. In December of that year, Joanne's case was featured on the show America's Most Wanted. Many leads were generated, but there was no success. John had escaped, and there wasn't much hope of finding him. He was indicted, but he would never be arrested. On October 18, 2006, the police in Chiapas, Mexico, responded to concerns about a family who had not been seen in a while. There was a bad odor coming from their apartment. When the police entered, they found the body of Laura Padilla and her 2 children. All 3 had died from carbon monoxide poisoning. The police could not figure out how carbon monoxide had filled the apartment. However, they were able to figure out that Laura's husband was John Patrick Addis. There were concerns that John would continue his killing spree, but as it turns out, his body was found in Guatemala a few weeks later. A local medical examiner reported that he died from a heart attack. The police believe that John brought an end to his own life. John Patrick Addis was buried in Guatemala, and the case was closed. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. When John was young, he was described as intelligent, athletic, and musically inclined. He wanted to study biology and was interested in medical school. After getting married, he became obsessed with the idea of living in the wilderness and hunting. This is why he moved his family to Alaska. When John was with the Alaska State Troopers, he was described by his colleagues as a strong, self-reliant, and tough outdoorsman. He was an expert at survival, had a good understanding of firearms, and took pride in his ability to live without modern inventions. One acquaintance said that John should have been born 100 years earlier. Item number 2. For the most part, John made a positive impression on his colleagues. He was an excellent officer, was highly committed to learning about science, paid attention to details, and maintained a rigid and straight-laced approach to investigating. John was described as an extremely conservative individual, even to the point of being prudish and moralistic. For example, other troopers did not make jokes about sex in front of him because he would get offended. John had a particular interest in applying scientific discoveries to criminal investigations. He learned a lot about blood spatter, insect life, stages of decomposition, and synthetic fiber recovery, like fibers from carpets. Despite being well respected as a manly outdoor figure who loved science, John's colleagues noticed a few quirks. For example, John had a pilot's license, but was reckless when flying, like he would fly in bad weather. John did not demonstrate effective people skills. It was almost as if people were objects to him. Due to spending a lot of time in the cabin, John didn't smell too great much of the time, and John dressed too casually for work, like his shoes were not polished. The description of John's difficulty relating to people is curious considering how, later, he would be known for being charismatic and attractive. Evidently, John was able to adjust his behavior based on his goals. His charisma was a tool that he could deploy at will. Item number 3. John had a number of beliefs which were described as unusual or bizarre. For example, he believed that aliens had visited the planet Earth in spaceships. They mingled with the human population and eventually reproduced with them. All humans on the planet descended from these alien visitors. Monuments all over the world had been constructed by aliens, like the pyramids and Stonehenge. The government was aware about the alien visitors and concealed information about their existence from the public. This represented a massive conspiracy of evildoers. John told a fellow trooper that he saw little people everywhere. He referred to them as, quote, the thems, unquote. The trooper said that John was dead serious when revealing this. Regarding the government cover-up, John wrote a screenplay about evil government conspirators and aliens. The only goal the screenplay achieved was accumulating a long list of rejections from Hollywood production studios. Considering that many conspiracy theorists think that Hollywood executives are alien lizard humanoids, it seems strange that John would send them a screenplay. Item number 4. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. John Patrick Addis did not seem to have any personality pathology when he was younger, but over time his traits changed quite a bit. He went from being career-minded, responsible, and well-liked to being demanding, manipulative, impulsive, and antisocial. John possessed superficial charm and did not have empathy. He was obsessed with sex, had anger problems, was violent, and ultimately resorted to homicide. The main theme in John's life involved him being afraid of losing what he had, to the point of being paranoid. In particular, he was afraid of abandonment, so he had a borderline trait. To address this fear, John tried to control women who he was with romantically. Relying on his physical attractiveness, John was able to initiate relationships successfully, but his antisocial characteristics drove women away. Joanne Albanese was murdered because she stood up to John and would not tolerate his mistreatment. John was able to get away with the murder because of his intelligence and police training. He was a frightening and effective criminal who could escape from law enforcement quite easily, but was unable to escape from his own personality. Now moving to my final thoughts. I have researched thousands of different cases during my time making videos, and every now and then, one case will intersect with another in a surprising way. The case of John Patrick Addis has a curious and obscure connection to a case that I covered about a man named Carl McCunn. Carl was a loner who, in 1981, traveled to an area about 75 miles north of Fort Yukon, Alaska. He was there to take photographs, but did not make arrangements to be picked up. His situation soon became desperate because he was stranded in the wilderness. When John was a trooper in Alaska, he loved to go hunting. One of his fellow troopers took a state police aircraft to search for a place to hunt with John, and at the same time conducted a welfare check on Carl. The trooper flew over where Carl was camped, but Carl waved to him in a manner that was casual. Therefore, the trooper thought he was fine. A few months later, Carl died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It was either that or starved to death. Carl had the desire for adventure, but was not in possession of a belief that he could survive. John had the desire for adventure, but his lovers could not survive his belief that they were possessions. Those are my thoughts on the case of John Patrick Addis. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.